What the fire made. Before this story ends, you will understand why she waited 3 years instead of one. You will understand why she named her children with his name, why she walked back into Seoul without concealer on her face, and why the three most dangerous men in the Go Consortium's intelligence division were, by the end of it, answering to Dad. Stay with this, because this one doesn't end the way you think. It doesn't end with a confrontation. It ends with a signature. And everything before that signature is the story of a woman who took the thing that was meant to erase her and used it as a load-bearing wall. A woman at a Busan kitchen table at 2 a.m., nursing an infant on her left side and reading a civil law textbook with her right hand, her face half in shadow and half in the specific light of a single desk lamp that is the only illumination in the apartment, because the overhead bulb burned out 2 weeks ago, and she has not had a free hand to change it. The left side of her face, the side turned toward the lamp, carries a scar from the corner of her eye to the line of her jaw. Ridged, pale, permanent. She does not touch it. She has not touched it in 8 months. She is reading a chapter on evidentiary standards in civil assault cases, and she is reading it with the focused, unhurried attention of someone who has all the time in the world, which she does not have, and all the intention in the world, which she does. The infant on her left is Jian. Ji-ho and Ji-seo are asleep in the adjacent room, their synchronized breathing audible through the paper-thin wall. It is, she will think later, the most load-bearing image of the 3 years. A woman reading law at 2 a.m. with a baby on her chest, because that is what it looked like to build something from nothing. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just the work and the specific patience of a person who understands that structures are not built in gestures. They are built in hours. The Huang estate in Seongbuk-dong had 42 rooms and the particular coldness of a building maintained for function rather than habitation. The gardens were immaculate. The staff moved efficiently and silently. The marriage had been in operation for 2 years and 11 months and had the same qualities. Yu Se-na understood the estate's mechanics from her first week. She had assessed it the way she assessed all structural systems, with patience and without emotion, identifying load points, stress concentrations, the specific places where the architecture would fail if pressure was applied incorrectly. She had married Hwang Tae-jun at 26 for reasons that were explicit and financial, and that she had never once pretended were otherwise. Her mother's medical bills, her father's firm's debt, a monthly allocation and a legal designation in exchange for presence and silence. She had signed the document with the specific discipline of an engineer who has calculated every variable and accepted the structural cost. What she had not calculated, that her mind could not occupy a system without mapping it. Within 6 months, she had identified 3 critical inefficiencies in the Huang Construction subsidiary management that would, unaddressed, generate criminal liability within 4 years. She said nothing. She took notes. She filed the information in the engineering notebook she kept in the private library, a room Tae-jun had no interest in and therefore never entered. Alongside her professional calculations and the quiet, accumulating architecture of a woman thinking several moves ahead of the position she appeared to occupy, the bridge was the first evidence of this. A municipal contract. A junior project manager, incorrectly assuming she had authority, who came to her with a structural calculation error that would have caused a collapse within 3 years. She corrected it overnight. She filed the amended specification under her own engineering credentials. She said nothing to Tae-jun. The project director called to express gratitude. Tae-jun assumed it was routine staff competence. This was the pattern. Her contributing. Him not looking. It was not cruelty. It was a specific kind of negligence. And Sina, who had learned from structural engineering that negligence and cruelty produce the same failures, had been filing the pattern in the same notebook as the rest. She discovered the pregnancy at week 8. She told Tae-jun at week 12, not with announcement, but with the factual precision of a structural report. A development has occurred. Here are the specifications. He nodded. He did not ask questions. He had been less present than usual for 2 months, which she had noted. By week 20, the medical confirmation. 3 heartbeats. She processed this alone in the library while Tae-jun attended a dinner that ran until 2 a.m. By month 7, she was 3 weeks from ready. She had been building toward a confrontation for 4 months. Not impulsive, not emotional, a calculated move at a calculated time. She was 3 weeks from the specific point where her documentation would be sufficient and her position secure enough to act. She was 3 weeks from ready. The Thursday in March arrived before she was. The estate's front entrance called at 9 in the evening to report a guest. The security staff, 2 men on Tae-jun's payroll for 4 years, let her through. Mirai came down the main hallway with a spray bottle in her coat pocket and the specific confidence of a person who has been told she is prepared. She was not prepared. She was an instrument. Sena understood this the instant Miri's hand moved, not in the moment of the liquid hitting her face, but in the 3 seconds before it, in the specific quality of Miri's expression. Not hatred, but the terrified performance of someone following instructions she did not fully understand. The bottle had been given to her. The language she'd been given to justify it was not her language. This was not a woman acting. This was a woman being used. None of this mattered in the moment. What mattered was the cold water, the kitchen sink, the calculation. Run cold water. Do not move. Stay upright. Breathe. She stayed upright. She breathed. Mrs. Cho, who had worked for the Huang family for 18 years and had never involved herself in family matters until this specific night, called an ambulance in direct contravention of standing orders. Then she called the second number, the one Sina had given her at month 4. If something happens to me that I can't call about myself, use this. Sina was treated at the Mapo clinic by a doctor who asked no questions and documented everything, every photograph, every measurement, every chemical analysis of the residue. She requested copies. The doctor provided them. She was released at 4 a.m. She took a taxi to Busan. She had the address memorized for 2 months. The Busan apartment had 2 exits, a view of a parking structure and, beyond it, through a narrow gap between buildings, a distant horizontal line of sea. Sina had chosen it for the exits and the anonymity of the building's management system, and the retired criminal court judge in the apartment on the left, whose professional library was visible through his open door on the 2 occasions she had helped him carry groceries. She delivered the children 6 weeks early, a retired midwife from the building, a hospital-grade kit, the specific focused competence of a woman who had read every relevant text and prepared every contingency. She named them before she slept. Jiho, Jiseo, Jian, Huang. She gave them his name with the deliberate precision of an engineer placing a load-bearing element. The name was a structure. She had uses for it. Year 1, the engineering license completion. She had abandoned the correspondence course when estate life consumed her study time. She returned to it with the inflexible focus of a woman for whom the hours between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. were the only ones reliably uninterrupted. The children slept in coordinated shifts because she trained them to, not with harshness, but with the patient, systematic approach of someone calibrating equipment. She recertified. She passed. she filed the credential under her own name. Year 2. The documentation file. This was the work that ran parallel to everything else. To the remote consultation contracts she built through a professional intermediary, to the children's development, to the quiet accumulation of a life that did not announce itself, the clinic photographs, the chemical analysis reports, the spray bottle residue documentation that Mrs. Cho had quietly extracted from the estate kitchen drain trap before it was cleaned, and the piece that took longest, the financial thread connecting the operative who filled the bottle to Hwang Sung-chul's personal account network. It was there in the construction subsidiary records she had already mapped. It had always been there. She had needed the specific freedom of having nothing left to lose before she was willing to pull it. Year 3. Attorney Kwon Dae-in. The meeting in a Busan office where a woman of 47 reviewed Sena's documentation file and sat in silence for 4 minutes. Kwon Dae-in. This is the cleanest evidentiary construction I have seen in 22 years of practice. Who built this? SEO Sena. I did. Kwon Dae-in. What do you do? SEO Sena. Structural engineering. Kwon Dae-in looked at her for a moment. Same thing, really. Also in year 3, Lee Ju-hyun appeared at Sena's door on a Wednesday in October, precise and direct, and representing an interested party whose interest in Sena's children's registered names was, Lee explained, both legal and operational. SENA. Come back tomorrow. Bring the Go Consortium's last 3 annual financial disclosures and your employer's professional biography. Not the public one. Lee Ju-hyun blinked once. Then she said she understood and left. Sena closed the door and made tea and stood at the window looking at the parking structure. She had been waiting 14 months for exactly this type of contact. Not from the Go Consortium specifically. From the predictable direction of someone who would eventually recognize what the children's names meant. She had built her response before the pressure arrived. This is what structural engineers do. Lee Ju-hyun returned the following morning with the requested documents and Go Yeon-seok himself, who had not been requested. Sena opened the door and assessed him in the specific, unhurried way she assessed all new variables. 45, lean, the particular stillness of a man who has learned that the most powerful position in any room is the one that requires the least expenditure of energy. CO, Sena. You brought yourself. Go Yeon-seok. The documents were easier to explain in person. She stepped aside. The kitchen table served as her engineering workspace. Drafting paper, 2 laptops, calculations pinned to the wall above it. She did not clear any of it. He sat across from her and did not comment on the workspace, which she noted. He looked at the framed engineering credential on the wall, not at the scar. This went into a category she did not yet have a label for. Go Yeon-seok. You recertified while raising 3 premature infants. SEO Siena. They slept sometimes. She set tea on the table. She remained standing. He laid out the Go Consortium's position with the directness of a man who had decided that intelligence games were a waste of time he valued, access to the Hwang succession process, the children as the legally significant instrument, legal coordination, and shared judicial resources in exchange for timeline cooperation. She listened. When he finished, she picked up her tea. SEO Sena. What does the Go Consortium gain from a court-supervised trust structure for 3 3-year-olds? Go Yeon-seok. Hwang Tae-jun's operational authority is derived from his leadership of a solvent syndicate. Court supervision removes that authority without requiring criminal prosecution. A reduced Tae-jun is more useful than a prosecuted one. SEO Sena. Because a prosecuted syndicate collapses and creates a vacuum you'd have to compete to fill. A reduced one creates a managed transition you can influence. A pause. Go Yeon-seok. Yes. SEO Sena. My interests are not your interests. I want Huang Sung-chul prosecuted for criminal assault and conspiracy. I want the acid attack on public record. I want my children to have their name and what it entitles them to without their father's authority attached to it. I want to return to Seoul and practice engineering without living inside someone else's security calculation. Go Yeon Seok. Those interests are not incompatible with mine. The silence had the specific texture of two assessments completing simultaneously. It was not comfortable. It was precise. SEOSENA. I'll need 2 weeks to review the disclosures. If they confirm what you've represented, I'll instruct my attorney to contact yours. And I want Lee Ju-hyun as the consortium's liaison on this file. Not a senior counsel, I don't know. He almost smiled. Not quite. Go Yeon Seok. Done. He stood. He put on his coat. At the door he paused. One of those pauses impossible to classify as deliberate or involuntary. Go Yeon Seok. The load distribution model on your wall? Is that for the succession filing? SEO Sina. For a bridge in Incheon, I consult. He left. Sina stood in her kitchen for 40 seconds after the door closed, longer than she usually stood still. Then she sat down and opened the Go Consortium's annual disclosure. She read it in one sitting. It confirmed everything he had represented. It also revealed 2 things he had not mentioned: that his organization had been building a criminal evidence file against Sung-chul for 11 months, and that Yeon Seok's younger brother had died in a Hwang-contracted construction collapse 6 years ago. A collapse whose inspection records had been fraudulently certified. Sung-chul's signature on 2 of them. She sat with this for a long time. Then she wrote one line in her notebook. Shared load, distributed force, stronger structure. She called Kwon In. SEO Sina. Start the filing. We have a structural partner. Hwang Byung-soo was dying with clarity. This is the specific gift of a certain kind of death. It removes the useful fictions a person has been maintaining and leaves only the load-bearing elements of what they actually understand. He had run the succession calculation for 8 months in his private study, a room that Tae-jun had not entered since his mother's death 14 years ago. Byung-soo sat there every evening with his medical reports and his private legal team's correspondence, and the specific patience of a man who understood that power is infrastructure. It requires maintenance, load calculation, and the absolute refusal of structural weakness. He had built the Hwang Syndicate from a single construction contract in 1979. He had handed it to Tae-jun 11 years ago because Tae-jun was capable. What he had not fully accounted for was what capability becomes when it is no longer required. A muscle that doesn't know it has atrophied until the weight arrives. The weight had arrived. Mrs. Cho's call came 4 months after Sena left. A single sentence, delivered with the specific flatness of someone who has been holding information long enough to make peace with the fact of it. Mrs. Cho. Your son's household burned his wife's face, and he processed it as a legal separation. Byung-soo was quiet for a long time. Then he called his private legal team. He instructed them to locate Yu Sena, to review the succession charter's language regarding legitimate blood grandchildren, to prepare a trust structure executable within 48 hours of his death. He did not tell Tae-jun. He continued appearing at weekly council meetings, thinner each time, quieter each time. Tae-jun attributed his father's silence to illness. This was incorrect. Byung-soo had never been more focused. When his representatives arrived at Sena's Busan door and explained the succession charter, she listened without expression. When they finished, she said, "Come back Thursday. Bring the full charter, not the summary." She closed the door. She made tea. She stood at the window and thought about load-bearing structures, about the specific point in any architecture where a single element, properly positioned, redirects the force of the entire system. On Thursday, she reviewed the full charter with the precision of an engineer reading a building specification. The succession clause was unambiguous. Jiho was 3 years old and had his mother's eyes and no idea that his name was the most significant legal instrument in 50 years of Huang syndicate history. The filings would synchronize: the criminal case, the succession trust, the Go Consortium's parallel financial irregularity case. 3 separate legal structures, 1 detonation, time to the hour. In Seoul, Tae-jun attended construction dinners and managed a mistress who had become erratic and a council member who had become careful. He had received no communication from Sina since the legal separation. He had concluded that her silence meant she was managing. He had not examined this conclusion. He had not looked. Sina arrived in Seoul on a Tuesday morning in November and booked a hotel in Gangnam, the specific kind of visible, high-status address that communicates not wealth but intention. She arrived with 3 children, 1 attorney, and a carry-on bag of files. No concealer on the left side of her face. The scar was exactly what it was. Present, permanent, a fact she had long since stopped treating as a source of information about herself. The Huang Syndicate's intelligence network flagged her check-in within 4 hours. Tae-jun's head of intelligence delivered the report at 6 p.m. Tae-jun read it again, held his bourbon glass without drinking for a long time. Tae-eun. Is she alone? Intelligence. Chief. 3 children and attorney Kwon Dae-in. Tae-eun. Find out who else she's met with in the past 30 days. He would spend the next week learning the answer. Each piece of intelligence would add another load-bearing element to the structure he had been standing on without examining. By the end of the week, he would have the complete picture. By then, it would be too late for the picture to be useful, which Sena had calculated when she timed the return. The first Seoul meeting between Sena and Yeon-seok took place at Lee Joo-hyun's architectural firm. He arrived first. He was at the window when Sena entered with the 3 children. Brought deliberately because the children were part of the legal record and because she had decided he would handle their presence correctly or he would not, and she needed to know before the collaboration went further. Jian saw him first. She walked to him with the complete confidence of a 3-year-old who has made a decision and sees no reason to delay its execution. Jian. You're tall. Go Yeon-seok. You're not. Jian considered this assessment. She decided it was accurate and therefore acceptable. She sat on the floor near his feet and began examining the hem of his coat with focused material assessment interest. Sena, watch this. She went to the table and opened her files. The meeting ran 3 hours. They finalized the coordination. 3 filings, 3 courts, 1 morning. The architecture was load distributed. No single legal team could manage all 3 simultaneously. No single judicial connection could suppress all 3. At the 90-minute mark, it was operationally complete. At the end of it, Lee Joo-hyun took the children to the cafe next door. Sena and Yeon-seok were momentarily alone. Go, Yeon-seok. The timing is tight. If Byung-soo's condition deteriorates faster than the medical projection, SEO, SENA. It won't. He's a structural man. He'll hold until the load is transferred. Go, Yeon-seok. You've spoken to him? SEO, Sena. His lawyers speak for him now, but the charter clause is his architecture. He built it to last. A pause. Go Yeon-seok. You admire him? SEO, Sena. I understand him. The distinction was deliberate. There's a difference. He looked at her. She looked at the window. Outside, Seoul moved through itself without pause. Hwang Sung-chul received his intelligence report on a Tuesday morning with his tea. He read it in the specific stillness of a man who has been comfortable for so long that the arrival of danger registers not as fear, but as a kind of structural vertigo. The floor is there, and then it is slightly less there. He set the cup down carefully. He called Miri. Miri had spent 3 years living with the incremental understanding that she had been used. The spray bottle. The sedative, she was told, was a sedative. The woman she had hurt and had not meant to hurt in the specific way she hurt her. She had been angry about this for nearly 3 years. The specific anger of a person who cannot direct it anywhere that doesn't also destroy them. Sung Chul's call was not the first time she had heard from him. It was the first time she understood, in the clean way that comes after long enough of living with something, exactly what she was going to do with the information she'd been holding. He offered money. She said she would think about it. She called Kwon Dae-in 30 minutes later. Miri. I have information about Hwang Sung-chul, specifically about the spray bottle and the woman who gave it to me. I want to know what my cooperation is worth. Kwon Dae-in called Sena immediately. Sena. Tell her I want a direct meeting. No lawyers in the room, just her and me. Kwon Dae-in. Sena. She was used. She was an instrument someone else chose. I don't need her repentance. I need her testimony. Those are different things. The meeting took place in a hotel cafe. Public space. Neutral ground. Mirai arrived first and was sitting with the posture of a woman who has been holding a specific tension in her spine for 3 years. Sena arrived, sat, ordered tea. She looked at Miri with the expression of a structural engineer assessing a damaged element. Not contemptuous, not sympathetic. Analytical. SEOSENA. Tell me about the woman who gave you the bottle. Mirai told her everything, every detail she had rehearsed mentally for 36 months. When she finished, Sena opened her phone and turned it toward her. SEO Sena. Is this her? Miri looked at the photograph, a woman in her 50s in the background of a Hwang Syndicate dinner. Miri. Yes? SEO Sena. Her name is Kim Soo-yeon. She's been on Hwang Sung-chul's private payroll for 11 years. Miri stared at the photograph. Miri. I hurt you. The specific flatness of it, the voice of a person who has needed to say a thing for so long that the saying is almost anticlimactic. SEOSENA. Yes, you did. A pause. Not long. The man who made you into the person who did that will be in criminal court before winter ends. Your testimony makes that certain. Your absence makes it more difficult. Those are your options. Miri provided full written testimony 2 days later. Sung Chul received no further communication from her and interpreted her silence as compliance. He would not discover what she had given Kwon Dae-in for another 11 days. When he did, he was in a council meeting. He excused himself. He walked to the men's room. He stood at the sink with cold water running and looked at his own face in the mirror for a long time. The load-bearing element he chose not to reinforce for 3 years had failed. The structure above it was in motion. The intelligence report ran to 47 pages. Tae-jun read it on a Thursday evening alone in his private study with a glass of bourbon he forgot to drink. He read it in one sitting because he could not put it down once he had started. Page 12. The criminal filing against Sung Chul. Miri's witness testimony. The acid attack charge. The pregnancy aggravation clause. Page 19. The succession trust. Jiho's name. His father's private legal team, a team whose existence Tae-jun had not known, conducting business he had not been informed of for 8 months. Page 28. Go Yeon-seok. The parallel financial case. The construction subsidiaries. His own accounts, partially entangled. Page 34. The children, birth certificates, photographs from the Busan Civil Registry. Jiho, Jiseo, Ji-an. 3 years old, his name on the documents, his face in nothing. He put the report down on page 34. He picked up the bourbon glass. He set it down without drinking. The architecture of what he had chosen not to look at was complete now. He could see all of it: the bridge specification, the engineering notebook in the library, the mind that had been maintaining his syndicate's structural integrity while he attended dinners, the mind he had processed as a legal complication. Seung-chul had used his negligence like a tool, and he had supplied that tool by choosing, with the specific deliberateness of a man who knew that looking at something makes it real, not to look. He called his father's private number. Mrs. Cho answered. Tae-yoon. I need to see him. Mrs. Cho. He knows. He's been waiting. The conversation between them was quiet. Byung-soo did not raise his voice. He was too far past that. Byung-soo. I built this organization to last. You burned the woman who was maintaining it and filed her as a legal complication? That is not leadership. That is a structural failure. Tae-yoon. I didn't know about the acid. Byung-soo. You chose not to know. In 40 years of building, I never once chose not to know. That is the difference between us. Tae-joon sat in his car in the estate parking structure for 22 minutes. Then he drove to Seung-chul, not in violence, but in the specific cold focus of a man who has decided that if he is going down, he knows the gravity pulling him there and intends to reverse it. He delivered Seung-chul's financial records to the Prosecution Service's Organized Crime Division the following morning. A personal statement. The shell company routing. Seung-chul named as architect. He did it not from justice. He did it because it was the only move that reduced his own exposure. And because reading Sina's evidence package in the intelligence report, he had seen the load-distributed architecture of 3 simultaneous filings, the synchronized timing, the complete chain of evidence construction, and understood that this was the mind he had sat across from at dinner. The mind that had corrected the bridge specification. The mind he had processed as a legal complication when he chose not to look. He could not give her anything back. He knew this clearly. But he could remove the man who had used his negligence to begin it. Lee Joo-hyun's architectural firm became the operational headquarters for the 3 filing coordination, and the children, because Sina's childcare arrangements ran on precision rather than abundance, were frequently present in the secondary conference room that Lee Joo-hyun had stocked with engineering toy sets in approximately 90 minutes. This is where the story's title earns its architecture. Baek Hyun-soo was 52, a Go Consortium intelligence operative of senior standing, the father of 3 adult daughters, and the first of the 3 men to encounter the children regularly. He was present at every legal coordination meeting. Jian decided on day 2 that his face was trustworthy. Based on assessment criteria Sina could not fully reconstruct, but which appeared to involve the specific quality of his attention when Jian spoke. Jian was 3. She spoke often. Baek Hyun-soo listened with the patient focus of a man who had learned that small people have important things to say. On the 4th day of meetings, Jian brought him a drawing, a building, her approximation of one. She presented it with the seriousness of a professional submitting a deliverable. Jae-an. This is my building. Baek Hyun-soo. It's a good building. Jae-an. It needs a door. She took the drawing back, added a door with a crayon, returned it. Now it's better. By week 2, Ji-ho and Ji-seo had annexed the conference room as a structural laboratory, rearranging furniture into load-bearing experiments. Im Dae-chul and Choi Sung-woo, 48 and 44, the other 2 senior operatives, had become regular fixtures of the children's day through the uncomplicated gravity of 3-year-olds, who do not recognize the architecture of professional rivalry and respond instead to the architecture of presence. Ji-seo started it. He could not manage Baek Hyun-soo's name, too much syllable for his current capacity. He said, Bayek Abeoji. The construction for a paternal older figure that a 3-year-old deploys without understanding its weight. Im Dae-chul and Choi Sung-woo received the same within 2 days. Yeon Seok observed all of this from the periphery of multiple meetings. He said nothing. But when the intelligence briefing described, in the context of professional engagement with the Hwang succession file, 3 senior Go Consortium operatives being addressed as dad by the children who were the legal instruments of the Hwang Syndicate's operational reduction, he read the briefing note and set it down and looked out the window for a long time. The note reached Tae-jun's network within the week. He read it in his private study. The 3 enemies call him Dad. He read it 3 times, set it down, picked up his phone. He called his father's lawyers. Tae-yun. The trust structure. I want to add a provision. Additional educational trust for each child. Funded from my personal account. Lawyer. Mr. Hwang, that provision will have no effect on the succession timeline. Tae-yun. I know, that's not what it's for. He hung up. He sat with the knowledge that this gesture changed nothing and cost him nothing in the legal architecture. It was not strategy. It was the only human thing available to a man in a situation of his own construction. He did it anyway. This was the closest Hwang Tae-jun came to reckoning. Hwang Byung-soo died on a Wednesday in December at 4:17 a.m. Mrs. Cho was with him. He died with the completeness of a man who had finished what he needed to finish. Sena received the notification at 5 a.m. She was already awake, had been since 3, sitting at her desk with the filing timeline open, the children asleep in the adjacent room. She read the notification. She closed the laptop. She sat in the dark for 12 minutes. Then she opened the laptop and sent one email to Kwon Dae-in. Execute. At 9 a.m., 3 separate legal filings landed simultaneously in Seoul's criminal court, the family court's succession division, and the commercial court's financial irregularities division. The criminal filing charged Hwang Sung-chul with aggravated assault, conspiracy, and 2 counts of criminal negligence relating to the construction collapse of 6 years prior. The succession filing initiated the trust structure for the 3 Hwang children. The commercial filing presented the Go Consortium's financial irregularity case against the Hwang construction subsidiaries, cross-referenced with Tae-jun's own prosecution service statement. The Hwang Syndicate's lead senior partner received all 3 notifications within 6 minutes of each other. He looked at the 3 summaries for 30 seconds. He called Tae-jun. Senior partner. We can manage one of these cleanly. We cannot manage all 3 simultaneously. The evidentiary chain on the succession filing alone? Tae-yun. I know. Senior partner. The criminal filing against Sung-chul will be picked up by every financial media outlet in Seoul by noon. Tae-yun. I know. Senior partner. Do you want us to? Tae-yun. No, let it run. Senior partner. Sir. Tae-yun. My father built the charter. His lawyers built the trust. The woman I married built the evidence. The structure is sound. Let it run. He hung up. He stood at the window of his private study for a long time. Below, Seoul was beginning its day. Somewhere in it, Sena was in Lee Ju-hyun's firm with 3 children and an attorney, and the specific calm of a person watching a load distribution calculation perform exactly as designed. The media picked up the criminal filing at 11:40 a.m. Sung-chul was arrested at 2:15. The succession trust was confirmed by the family court at 4:30. By evening, Seoul's financial press was running the story that the Hwang Syndicate's operational authority had been suspended pending court-supervised trust administration, with Yoo Se-na named as the children's legal representative in all syndicate matters. Tae-jun was photographed entering his building at 5 p.m., alone without security detail, in a coat that had started to show the specific wear of a man who had stopped caring about appearances. He looked like what he was. a man who had chosen not to look, watching the consequence. The trust formalization took place on a Thursday morning on the 42nd floor of a Gangnam law office, with a view Sena assessed upon entering as structurally impressive but architecturally conservative. Yeon Seok was in the lobby when she arrived. Not by arrangement. She saw him and did not break stride. SEO, Sena. You didn't need to come. Go, Yeon Seok. No, I know. He fell into step beside her. The children filled the elevator ride with their own commentary. Jian analyzing the floor buttons with focused interest. GCO leaning against Sena's leg with the settled weight of a child who has decided the day is manageable. Jiho standing very straight and counting floor numbers. The conference room had a children's play area in the corner. Someone had arranged this practically. Sena suspected Lee Ju-hyun. She said nothing. The trust documentation review took 90 minutes. Every clause confirmed. Every provision verified. Sena reviewed the guardianship provision language one final time, not because she doubted it, but because she had reviewed every significant document 3 times before signing it for 3 years and was not going to change the methodology today. The children migrated from the play corner to the conference table. Jiho and Ji-seo drew on the backs of unused procedural documents. Jian sat on the floor near Yeon Seok's chair. He had relocated there somewhere between the 80-minute and 90-minute marks without anyone tracking the precise moment, and examined the hem of his coat with focused material assessment interest. The senior partner slid the final document across the table. Sena picked up the pen. Jiho looked up from his drawing. He looked at the room. His mother with the pen, the serious adults, the large windows, and the city 42 floors below. He had his mother's spatial assessment, and he had absorbed, in the way small children absorb everything, the specific quality of this morning's energy. Jiho. Amma, is this our house now? The room was quiet. Jian stopped examining the coat hem. GCO looked up. Sena paused. She looked at her son. She looked at the document. She looked at the city through the window. 42 floors below, Seoul moving through itself without pausing, indifferent and enormous and full of structures that held because someone calculated the load correctly. SEOSENA. It's your name. Your name is your house. She signed. The pen made its line, clean and precise and complete. The senior partner collected the document. Kwon Dae-in exhaled slowly. The trustee made a notation. Yeon Seok, beside Jian on the floor, said nothing. He was looking at the city through the window the same way Sena had been a moment ago. Jiho went back to his drawing. He added a shape to the corner, angular, precise. JISEO. What is that? Jiho. A house. He looked at it with the evaluating satisfaction of a small structural engineer. With a name. Before this story ends, consider what it asked you to hold. Not a woman who survived, but a woman who calculated. Not a love story, but a load distribution model. Not a victory, but a structure designed to hold. Stay with this story, because the ending is not the signing. The ending comes after. Hwang Sung-chul's criminal trial began in February. Sena testified on the 3rd day for 4 hours. Engineering schematics of the construction collapse evidence, chemical analysis of the acid residue, the financial thread from Kim Soo-yeon to Sung-chul's account network. She testified without performance, without embellishment, with the complete precision of a person presenting a structure she built to hold. The conviction came in May. Hwang Tae-jun attended none of the trial. He managed a syndicate that now had a board-appointed administrator co-signing every significant decision. He had the title. He no longer had the authority. He was, as his father had calculated, reduced. He did not contact Sena. He sent a single line through Kwon Dae-in. Not a plea, not an explanation. A question. Do they know about the additional trust? Sena read it. She wrote back one sentence. They will when they're old enough to understand what a trust is. Miri settled her legal matter in March with cooperation credit. She left Seoul. Where she went was her own story, and Sena did not follow it. The Go Consortium's irregularity case concluded with a settlement that restructured 3 Huang construction subsidiaries under neutral management. Yeon Seok sent Sena a structural engineering paper at 11 p.m. on the night of the settlement with a note. Applied your load distribution model to the settlement architecture. Held perfectly. She read it at midnight. She wrote back, it usually does when the original calculation is sound. He read this at 12:04 a.m. He put the phone down. He picked it up again. He did not send a response. The next morning, at the Gangnam coffee shop, where they had been meeting for working sessions since November, he arrived with 2 cups, the correct order, unrequested, and a structural engineering journal with 3 pages marked. SEO Sina. This is the Incheon Bridge study. Go Yeon Seok. Third-party validation of your load distribution approach. Thought you'd want the citation? SEO Sina. I already have this citation. Go Yeon Seok. I know. I wanted to see if you'd tell me. She looked at him. He almost smiled. Not quite. She went back to the journal. Outside, Seoul moved through December with its usual indifference to the specific histories of the people inside it. In a Gangnam apartment that was larger than the Busan one and had a view of actual sky, 3 children who were now closer to 4 than 3 were conducting their morning activities with the focused energy of small people who had inherited their mother's spatial precision. Jian added a door to every drawing she made. Jiseo had begun asking questions about bridges. Jiho, on Tuesday mornings, sat at the kitchen table and drew buildings that were structurally accurate in ways that no 3-year-old should achieve, and showed them to his mother, who reviewed them with the seriousness they deserved. Sina had an engineering consultancy registered in her name, 3 active contracts, a case wrapping toward conclusion, and a professional correspondence with a man 45 floors up in a different building who brought the correct coffee and once sat on a conference room floor to look at the city from the same angle as a 3-year-old who had decided he was trustworthy. She capped her pen. She opened the next file. She began. This is what the fire made. Not a victim. Not a survivor in the passive sense of that word. Something more precise. The city burned her. She calculated the load. She distributed it across every available structure. And when the structure held, as she knew it would, because she is a structural engineer and she built it to hold, she was already working on the next one. Not finished, not arrived, in motion. Always, and specifically, and by her own design, in motion.